Hello everyone, this is Randy Malden with Supply Leaders Academy. Today we're going to talk to you about the 6th step to create a strategic sourcing plan. Now, why is it so important that we have a strategic sourcing plan? Because this point right here, last year they did a survey. 85% of CEOs believe they could not survive a disruption in their supply chain. What kind of disruptions? There's all kinds of disruptions. We're talking about natural disasters like the flood that recently shut down I-10, blizzards that shut down the road system and moving stuff, because you can buy it, have it in a warehouse, but if you can't get it where it needs to be, you're missing out. Your supply chain is failing. When we have humans involved here, people that will look at the port and they sit there and they shut it down because of either labor disputes or other issues where they just shut down the ports, which shuts down your supply chain. So you have to be strategic in what you're doing, or else you're not going to be successful when it comes to your supply chain. And that's what we don't want. We want you to be successful. Typhoons, explosions, factories destroyed, all of these things come down to your strategy in your supply chain to see whether or not you will be affected, or whether or not you will be one of the few that has planned appropriately so you are successful. I mean, 83% of CEOs also believe they do not have an optimized supply chain, which means they are leaving money on the table. For example, when the port shut down, $7 billion in problems, issues, inventory sitting on the docks, sitting on ships, waiting to be offloaded until the next time it goes around. Holiday season, moving stuff from one point to the other. Now, this appears to be a logistics issue, but in reality, it's a supply chain issue, because where you order from, who you order from, and how you move the stuff from point A to point B to put the right stuff in the right place at the right time, that will determine how successful your supply chain is. What you need to do is create a strategic sourcing plan so that you can manage, not react. We don't want to be in the reaction mode day in and day out. Instead, we want to manage things that we are able to optimize and get continuous improvement all the time. And that's why we're talking today about 6 steps to creating a strategic sourcing plan. How do you do that? Well, let me tell you, the reason I can share this with you is because I spent over 20 years in the Marine Corps, and since then retired, and spent that time between 2010 and now in industry building and working with people to build strategic sourcing plans so that their supply chain is assured, risk is less. This is me when I retired, or when I enlisted in the Marine Corps way back in 1989. My brother and I in Okinawa, I was on embassy duty here. Met my wife at the University of Florida when we got married, and did several deployments where I was involved in supply chain management, logistics for global operations for the Marine Corps. And you can imagine the amount of risk involved in that. And these are my kids and my family right before I go to my last deployment, and this is us after the Marine Corps. And this is where Jack Quinn Solutions comes from, because Jack is the middle name of this little guy here, and Quinn is the middle name of this guy right here, and Solutions, Sophia right here, JQS, Jack Quinn Solutions. It's a wonderful thing, wonderful thing. As you can imagine, being in the Marine Corps for so long, looking at global supply chains, we had a lot of things we had to consider. Our planning had to be exact, or else people got hurt. If people didn't have the things that they needed to execute the operations, then they tried anyway, and they did their best to be successful. And if they didn't have the stuff they needed, they could get hurt, and we don't want anyone to get hurt. And how does this apply to industry? When your customers call you to talk to you and ask you about things, they need to make sure that they have the stuff. You have the stuff for them. That's what you want to make sure. You have the stuff for them, and that also requires planning. Because when the customer comes to you and says, I need requirement A, and you either have it or you don't. If you don't have it, they go right on to the next person. And that's why you need to have a strategic sourcing plan so that you are absolutely successful. When I talk about strategic sourcing plans, when we talk about supply chain management, United States Marine Corps right here, just go to Amazon.com. You can download any one of these 3 books. I'll also give you some tips and techniques on how to get even more in depth with your supply chain analysis, how to analyze your supply chain to increase profitability. And then my last book here is how to pass the CPSM exams, which the CPSM is a Certified Professional Supply Management certification that tells people that you have professionals on your staff. You're either one of these professionals, or you have professionals on your staff that know what they're doing, because they've met a standard set by the Institute for Supply Management, which is a globally recognized organization, and they have done a very good job at putting together the correct components you need to be a successful manager of your supply chain. These will be the things that we'll be talking about today. How to align your strategy, how to select the best technology, how to prioritize your spending, how to determine outsourcing or not outsourcing, how to integrate strategic sourcing with sales and marketing, and then how to present your plan to executives so you actually get buy-in and support for strategic sourcing. This is a mind map we're going to talk about tonight, and you'll be able to see this. And let's kick it off with one, how to align strategic sourcing with corporate vision so your actions support the organization. What does it mean? That means if you are operating solo and you're not doing the things that you need to be successful, and the corporation, or what you need to make the corporation successful, then your actions are not going to be supported, and you're going to cause more friction than help. You're going to make people nervous to where they're going to have fear, and they're going to stockpile and hoard things so they never run out, versus trusting you to deliver. Right here you can see an example of a large organization focusing on savings. When people say savings, they're talking about a supply chain. How do I better reduce my costs? How do I better increase my profits so our organization is good in the eyes of the shareholder, is good in the eyes of the customers, and we are making things happen? How do we do that? Well, we start with business processes. What business processes do we want to know? The strategic sourcing process, the planning, looking 3 to 5 years down the road, understanding our requirements for 3 to 5 years, knowing what's going to happen in the economy, knowing how that affects our cost, knowing how these things happen. And we talked about forecasting in our last webinar. If you haven't seen that, just go ahead and go to LinkedIn and you'll find it under my profile, and how forecasting starts to build the numbers you need to do strategic sourcing and knowing what we're going to do. We want to know that we can look at data, focus on the correct categories, develop a strategy based on each category, looking at cost and price, make sure we have the right suppliers in place, and we're developing our suppliers as strategic partners for the long term, not just instantaneous vendors or one-off vendors, because if you just do one, it's okay, you may get away with once. We're talking that long-term strategy, that long-term savings you get with strategic sourcing. How do you do it? You focus on the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Of course, your executives, decision makers. Your customers have a vote. They ultimately buy or don't buy your stuff. So they're ones that you have to think about. Your internal customers, the people you support who are delivering for your customers, your local community, your vendors, these are all stakeholders. You're going to work with operations to make sure that they have what they need so you reduce their fear that they're not going to have the stuff they want. Start building a strategic sourcing team with the appropriate level of experience in different areas. You don't need all experts in procurement, contract management. You need people from sales, finance, engineering, marketing, supply chain. All of these skill sets go into your strategic sourcing team. You can teach them these skills that we're talking about today. When you put them through our training, CPSM certification training, you're going to help them get these skills. But their experience on building relationships and understanding the scientific technicalities of a requirement, knowing how to negotiate, all these things come into play. So you got to go out and find the talent, and it takes time. Look at your projects and then work with forecasting, planning, IT, logistics, and bring all this together to start thinking strategically. And when I say strategically, you're talking 3 to 5 years down the road, thinking long term so that you are successful. Put the right policies and procedures in place. Make sure your senior leadership's on board. They know what you need, and they're going to give it to you. Help your sponsors give you the stuff that they help align with their needs and the way they need to be successful. So you align strategic sourcing and position things like operations. Make sure they always have the best stuff, the right place, right time, right quantity, right quality. Finance, that you're always showing savings. For operations, that you never run out. For executives, you're meeting the needs of the customer, increasing profitability. So you're engaging with those sponsors, those stakeholders, and aligning with their interest. And set up a very deliberate communication plan. Because when you start to do this, you're going to disrupt people. You're going to make them plan, think. They're going to be able to jump through hoops anymore to get there and put out fires all day long. Instead, you want to be very deliberate in your communication and control of your message. And then bring in cross-functional teams so that you have experts from throughout your organization. Because not only are you bringing in their expertise, but you're building consensus so that when you go out and you deliver and you start to implement things, you have champions throughout the organization to say, yep, I was part of that team. Yep, I made sure that solution worked, and I was helpful. And that way they're working for you, not against you. What better than to have a champion in engineering than somebody that worked on your project with you and helped you develop the solution? So when it implements and everyone else is complaining, they're like, nope, this is the best solution for us, guys. You need to get on board. That's what you're trying to do. That's why you have cross-functional teams. So we move on to the next one, which is how to select the best technology to support strategic sourcing. So you use the most effective technology. And this is one of my pet peeves. This is one of those areas that I like to talk a few minutes about because technology is rampant. There's all kinds of software out there that will help you do things better, faster, more accurate, more complete. But if you haven't done the process properly on developing the technology and implementing the technology, you're going to be able to do things faster and more wrong than anyone else. In other words, the technology, if it's not supporting the right process, can only make you do things wrong faster and better and more volume than doing the right thing. So you have to go through a proper process to identify the appropriate technology. And here's an article pulled right from today. Logistics Investors launched Supply Chain Technology Accelerator, which is great. I love technology and what it helps us do, but it's an accelerator, and it can accelerate your success or it can accelerate your failure. And that's why you have to have people that know how to use the technology and the information generated from the technology so that you're successful. You don't want to get technology that doesn't support your operations, doesn't support the functionality, and there's an appropriate way to do that. You're looking for the right technology. Step one, look at your process. Map out your process from step 1 to step 10 to step 25, step by step by step, in excruciating detail with a pen and paper. Write down your process step by step by step in excruciating detail. Work with that cross-functional team that you brought on board. Talk about the process. Do we have everything captured? Let them bring in their opinions. What you'll find is there's probably a lot of redundancy that can be eliminated, as well as some processes that are doing something that nobody wants to do, or people believe things are happening that aren't actually happening in the process. That's why you're going to do the process design first. Sit down with your team, write it all out, draw it out. After you do the process design, you're going to look for what technology is out there and what's available. You're going to look at what current systems you already have. My guess is that most of us have systems that give us the technology. You know, we don't have to go out and invest in something new. We just have to turn on what we currently have. Just turn on the systems, use the current systems. If our current systems aren't able to support us, then we go out on the market and see what's available based on functionality, which I'll talk about here in a second. You want to make sure that you are looking at the functionality that you need. If you focus on functionality first and then look at the bells and whistles on good technology, you will be successful. If you focus on bells and whistles on how neat and cool it is, then it's not going to serve you for the long term. So focus on functionality. For example, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I got the newest, greatest, latest, best warehousing management system ever, you need to do that. You'll say, well, I already have a warehouse management system. Absolutely, but ours is better. Okay, well, what functionality is it going to add to what we're already doing? Well, it'll help you identify quicker, faster where your stuff is in the bins. Well, we already have something to do that. So you go through this process, you focus on functionality, and if it gives you an additional functionality, then you go to the next step, which is the technical step. The technical step is, what are the technical requirements of the system? The technical requirements of the system. What do you need to have? Not only the technical piece of the software, what's going to do for you, but your infrastructure, your desktop software, or your laptops, all of these are technical requirements. The bandwidth coming into and out of your building, is there enough? Then you're going to look at the business that's trying to sell you the software. We just recently had a case here in Brevard County where I live where the school board bought a software from the incumbent, the system, that the company that used to do it, and they failed miserably. They just did not know what they were doing. And the kicker there is that they didn't go through a competitive process. They didn't go through an analysis and evaluation of what was going on out there. So the business that got the contract, although at the moment was a good business, they did the systems before 30 years previously, and now they could not adapt to the new technology. And had they gone through an appropriate RFP process, they would have identified that right off the bat. And then you look at pricing, because no matter how much you spend or don't spend, if the software doesn't work, it's a waste of money. And we don't want to waste money. We want to make sure we have the right technology to help us be successful. in doing that. And these are all the different sourcing tools you could possibly use. If you have a huge ERP system, you most likely have all of these somewhere in your system. You just have to tap into them. A purchase order system, we see that a lot. ERFX, an electronic RFI, RFP, RFQ, electronic data interchange, where you are connecting and sharing data. Mainly this is used for finance and payment. Reverse auctions, trying to get the price down. E-design, where the designs are uploaded into the cloud and you download them so all your vendors have the same designs and they're working together. A contract management system, where you go in and you pick the clauses that you should put in all your contracts. You had the lawyers look at them one time and now they're in your system and they're consistent unless the technology or the terms change. E-sourcing, a lot of us use e-sourcing. We just request and buy online. And then collaborative optimization, this is where we have these chat rooms, social media. These are all tools that we could use to be successful with e-technology. Good, as I mentioned before, make sure it serves the functionality that you need, and that starts with your business process design. What processes do we need to automate? Then we find tools to automate them. And that reverse auction, these are one of the techniques. What are the things you can do when you do a reverse auction? You get price transparency, validation. You want to make sure there's plenty of competition. Although it's a great technique, you want to make sure it's for the right components. If you don't have the right components involved in a reverse auction, then the vendors don't play. I let you know now, vendors don't like reverse auctions because they do the price compression. Yes, it's great for us as buyers, but our vendors have to play for it to work. So you want to make sure there's multiple vendors to participate, and they want to participate to get that business and doing that. The next thing we'll do is our spend analysis. It's all technology. Where am I spending my money? How am I spending my money? So you develop a category tree. Figure out where you're spending your money. Make sure you're getting appropriate data, accurate data that you can analyze to know where you're spending your money. And then we can do our risk management. How do we track risk? It could be on-time delivery. It could be our warehouse management system for inventory controls. It could be contract expiration. These are all tools, and these tools don't need to be expensive software tools. They can just simply be teaser files, a spreadsheet, something, an email reminder that comes through. These are all risk management tools that help remind us so that we don't get into a situation that we don't want to be in doing that. All right, that wraps up that. Let's move on to the next, which we're going to talk about, is how to prioritize spending to align with corporate plans. So if we've done our spend analysis, okay, we've done our spend analysis, our risk management analysis. Next thing we're going to do is align spending with the corporate plans. Here is where we have insight, and we want the CFO to take advantage of this. So this current article talking about how CFOs use insight in the supply chain forecasts so they know when to spend money for the company and then when to put it in the bank to earn money that way. How do we do this? First, we want to look at the organizational structure, identify what requirements need to be sourced, okay? What's the relationship with those sources, with those resources? Identify, evaluate their importance, look at the relationships between other commodities and stakeholders, and then align things with the corporate plans, the corporate vision. Make sure the stakeholders know why it's important. So we're talking about strategic sourcing and stakeholders, align strategic sourcing with the interest of the stakeholders, align everything, then implement those alignment strategies. So if we're talking about operations, we're making sure we have a sufficient inventory on hand so that they are able to deliver for the customer. We're talking about finance, is that we're doing competitive bidding, so we're always getting the best price. We're talking about internal customers, is them following the processes and the procedures in place to make sure we're managing our supply chain. So all of these tools are put in place, and we're tracking those results, and we're making sure that we are on track and delivering as we should, okay? And once we have this information, we did our spend analysis, we've done our forecasting, we've looked at the organizational structure, we're aligning with the interest of the stakeholders, now we're looking for opportunities. Opportunities to reduce spend, to reduce costs. The difference between spend and cost. Spend is how much we're paying on a price. Cost is how much it's costing us to operate and maintain it. Doing a risk analysis of the commodities so we're not putting our organization at risk while we're going through a transformation to strategic sourcing. Looking at the market, in other words, do we have enough breathing room in the market to allow us to go through this process, and actually making sure those requirements are going to meet the customer's needs. Looking for the opportunities, do our spend analysis, cost analysis, do our risk analysis. When we do our risk analysis, we're going to look at this specifically. What are the item characteristics? how much supply is available, how much the cost, the market characteristics, are there shifts in the market going on, economic conditions changes, price uncertainty changing, and then our suppliers. They are a key component to us going strategic. So we want to make sure we have the best suppliers. We do our vendor rationalization once a year. If you haven't seen that webinar, you go to our YouTube channel, CPSM Training, and you will find when we talk about vendor rationalization, where we go through and we look to make sure that we have the best suppliers in our supply chain. How many of us have vendor databases of 5,000 or more vendors? Well, we only use about 500, right? You want to make sure that those 500 are the best and purge the rest, so that you're focused on having a good, secure supply chain with partners that want to be with you for the long term. Then we do our market analysis, our suppliers market, our market, what changes are going on in the market using Porter's 5 forces, threat of entrance, threat of substitutes, power of the buyer, power of supplier. All of these are changes in the market and we need to be aware of. Okay. And then our requirements. And this, you really need to take a moment and really think about your requirements. And I'll share with you a story. Okay, in that when we have an engineer who believes that they require this specific vendor for this particular widget, for example, then they work with that vendor, they build a relationship with them, and then we come to find out that there's 100 other vendors that do the exact same thing. And then you go to that engineer, what makes this vendor, this widget so special? And that's when they tell you what the requirement is, and then you take that requirement and you put it on the market. It's very difficult. One of the biggest challenges we have is from an organizational behavior point of view in getting people to work within the strategic sourcing processes. So you want to make sure your requirements are clear. Once you have clear requirements, then you can go on the market to source those requirements. If your requirements are not clear, then you're going to spend a lot of time guessing and a lot of time rebuying because people don't really know what they need. We talk about leveraging strategies. These are strategies we use to get better pricing, such as we'll look at best price through an RFP process or an informal quote process, get at least 3 quotes. We will use volume. We'll buy, instead of buying 1 month purchase order, we instead go out and we do a 12-month contract. We look at other sources throughout the world. Is there other locations where we can find these commodities and reduce our costs because we're able to buy in different markets? Maybe we change the product to make it better. Maybe we work with our vendors, our customers, to make things better. And then we build the relationships for the long term. One of our best companies that we love to work with, what they do every year is they meet with their most strategic supply chain partners. And they tell them, this is where we're going. This is what we need you to do to be there. And if they're not going to be able to be there, they can actually start working 3 to 5 years out to find the better relationships. And then how are we going to prioritize our decision making? What are we going to focus on first when it comes to the commodity management? We're going to look at cost savings, or I like to say profit generation. The more money we save, the more profits we make, so we're going to look at profit generation. Our organizational capacity, meaning that if we're going to buy in volume, do we have the space to store that new inventory? If we're going to produce more than what we can sell right now because there's an opportunity based on resources, then do we have the ability to store that stuff? Can we produce it in mass at that time? Do we need to be more strategic in our production planning? The culture's ability to change and adapt and willingness to do so. And then constraints. Typical constraints could be, price, market, economics, the organizational behavior. These are all different things that could really affect our ability to do strategic sourcing, and we're considering this in our strategic sourcing planning. We're planning here, so you're sitting down with your team and you're looking at all these things you see on the mind map, and you're considering all these things so that you can be successful, because ultimately you're going to create a plan, which we're going to talk about here, and towards the end, what does that plan actually look like so you can execute that plan? How do you articulate it and get it to the right people so they are willing to work with you? So another part of your plan is going to be outsourcing. Can we outsource? Should we outsource? And great question. Currently in the media, should you outsource vendor management? Meaning, should you outsource your procurement capability? Randy's opinion? No. That's like giving somebody else your checkbook. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure you own your vendors, you manage your vendors, and you get the best relationships you can for your vendors. Now, based on the size of your organization, you might consider cooperatives and consortiums where they're able to bring all the requirements together and really negotiate in huge volume. But if you're if you're a large organization and you have the ability to put volume together, then you want to manage those vendor relationships. Okay. How do you do that? What are some things you're going to do? You're going to look at the feasibility of doing outsourcing. What are the feasibility of doing it? Can we outsource? Do we have the money, the capital to outsource? Is that something we can do, or is that something we need to let somebody else do? Is it our core capability? Okay, what could we outsource? How do we analyze this? We analyze what we are going to outsource. When do we break even? Meaning, once we place an order with a vendor, how soon do we break even in regards to us producing it ourselves versus outsourcing it? What's the cost benefit of doing that? You want to look at all types of factors, not only cost of material, cost of production, your ability to do something else, your ability to reduce your real estate footprint, your ability to then produce something that's within your core capabilities that you can sell, and then your incremental cost analysis, meaning at what stage do you go through this? Because when we're going to outsource, we're going to have to go through this in a process so that we don't run out of stuff when we need it. Instead, it's a process that helps us build it. Such as strategic factors, we've talked about the long economics, customer relationships, your vendors' economics, their marketing strategies, okay? Long-term supply implications. Once you outsource it, who's in control of that inventory? Your vendor is. Who's able to control cost? Your vendor does. You have an ability to negotiate. Yes, I understand that. But if you've outsourced this to a vendor and it turns out to be a sole source because you don't have multiple vendors doing it, then you will eventually be at the mercy of that vendor. So you want to make sure you have a strong relationship with them. Make sure your core competencies say your core competencies, but you outsource those things that aren't your core competencies. A common one is 3PLs or logistics. People that manage trucks and warehouse spacing, those are people you just outsource that. But if your core competency is manufacturing widgets, that's what you want to focus in on. You want to focus in on that. What are your supply risks? Is that, as I mentioned before, your vendor, they now have control of that supply, not you. Their ability to manage and improve their supply chain, their ability to manage and improve their cost performance, which then in turn affects you. Your ability to store, have on-time delivery. What will you do if you miss delivery or deliveries are late? You go through that process to make sure that you are not affected by outsourcing, that your outsourced vendors are able to support your operations so they can do it better than you can and cheaper than you can overall. How much control? You're going to lack control. Security of the process. Back up to the security of the process. Once we outsource and we give a vendor our plans, our design, our specifics, then how do we know that information is secured? How do we know they're not going to take that design and knock it off out of the back room? That's one of the things that fears of going overseas in production. Okay, what about the security of the information that they have about your company now and your demand for stuff in doing that? Total cost of ownership. Not only the cost of owning the particular item, but cost of maintenance and disposal. All of these factors come into play when we're deciding, do we outsource or not? You want to look at the entire process, not just one sliver of it. Look at everything. Like, it may be a quick decision. Let's get it out the door. Hey, let that person do it over there because we don't want to do that anymore. There could be longer term impacts that we need to be aware of. So we're looking at total cost of ownership. And then competition, because if your vendor, your outsourced vendor, is not only producing it for you, but most likely they have the ability or are also producing it for your competition. And now you're going to give them your supply. How do you know you are going to have priority of that supply? If you don't have it in your contracts, or you don't have that agreement or that long-term relationship with them, and all of a sudden they get to a shortage, who do they give that to? We had someone in our training, or went to a conference, and he was sharing with us an example of when he was involved in, he shipped soda ash to the Caribbean, and there was a shortage of soda ash. And he went to his vendor who had it, and he thought he had a good relationship with them. But then the vendor said, you know what? I have some, but I don't have any for you. I have it for my other customers. That's when he realized the value of relationships. That's when his competition got something that he couldn't get in doing that. So that's one of the things you think about. Now, some of the benefits are that you can reduce your assets. You don't need that manufacturing capability anymore. You don't need that storage capability anymore, or storage real estate anymore. There's a lot of things you can do to reduce those assets by outsourcing. doing that, but we just need to understand the price that we're going to pay when that happens. And once you go to a vendor and you give them a requirement and you want to change it, when you did it in-house, you could change it like that. It was easy to do. But now that you've outsourced it, their ability to change quickly or be flexible most likely is going to be less than your ability to do it, which means you're going to have to go through a process to make changes. They'll have to run it. It'll be a certain time of year, a certain time in their production process they can make those changes, but not before. So it's not going to be as responsive as it may have been in the past. The reason that's important is we're going to ask, how does that affect our ability to meet our customers' needs? How does that affect that ability to do that? And then, of course, public relationships. It's one of the major stories always in the news that such and such a company just outsourced their abilities overseas, and the effect on the local economy and the local jobs and all these different things. So this affects that. You have to manage that, showing that by outsourcing this, it's going to help our company grow and we're going to be able to stay in the area, or by doing this, it's going to help our customers and increase sales. So you got to manage that message. It's something that has to be deliberate, not something that we do on hope, that we hope they understand. We have to tell them why we're doing it and do it in the right way, right? Do it in the right way in doing that. We may have labor organizational constraints such as quality considerations. You don't have a quality workforce. They're not able to meet your needs, okay? Their socioeconomic goals to grow a local economy, their current capability, or even a capital investment. You know, you're going to go to your vendors and their ability to do this. If you outsource to a company and they are unionized, you need to be prepared for that. How is that going to affect your operations? How is that going to affect your ability to support your customers? It all boils down to you just got to go through a deep analysis to make sure it's going to make sense. Are you going to go offshore? Are you going to go inshore, insourcing? You're going to privatize. Okay, you're going to build another company off to the side. If you go overseas to another country and they nationalize that business, then what do you do? Okay, or if it's a nationalized business and you privatize it, what are you going to do in those situations as well? Okay, so we're going to go through this process, a very detailed process, to determine whether or not we're going to outsource an item. Let's take a look at strategic sourcing with sales and marketing, and this is imperative. One of the things you have to do is work with sales and marketing to make sure that our supply chain can support their success. If they're able to increase customer acquisition, they're able to increase market share, able to increase sales, that has an impact on us. So we have to be involved in those sales and marketing meetings. Let me ask you this question. How many of us are actually involved in the sales and marketing meetings? Just sit there listening. That's what you want to do. You want to make sure that you're involved in the sales and marketing process so that you are able to support that process. You would start with knowing what the target market is. Do a roadmap. Okay, what technology is available or what we're going to try and produce. Who's our target market? What's our current product features? What do they, who is our customer, and how much do we need them? I mean, not how much do we need them. Who is our customer specific? How much do they need our stuff? And how is our customer service aligned with their needs? Is it appropriately positioned in our distribution centers? Can it meet our needs so we can achieve top line growth? That's what it's all about at the end of the day, revenue. If we want to be successful, we have to generate revenue and be able to meet the needs of our customer. Do you have data on your sales performance? One of the best ways to find information or know what you sold in the past is simply look at historical data. Point of sale information, that's your cash register. How much are we selling at the cash register? Continuity of supply, how are we able to maintain serving our customer base? And then what specifically is the demographic of our customer? That helps us refine our marketing, helps us understand who they are, what they are. And from us, as a supply chain professional, we understand the economics and the impact of economics on our supply chain. So if we have a specific demographic that's affected by the economy or specific economic conditions, then that will affect sales, which in turn means we need to seriously consider, do we want to increase our sales quota or decrease our sales quota? Okay, and integrate those requirements between your suppliers and your customer system. So your suppliers are able to meet your requirements, and it's also meeting the needs of the customer. And you're in the middle. You're able to meet the needs, get the requirements from the vendors, and meet the needs of the customer. How do we strategize the pricing of our items? Well, we're going to look at margins, profit, market share, and other things to make sure that our pricing strategy is appropriate to make sales. The customer always has a vote to determine the value of what you're trying to sell them. And if they don't see the value in it, they're not going to pay the price no matter how much you're charging, even if you decide to give it away for free. My experience, when you decide to give something away for free, it has no value. So why would I want to invest my time in looking at it and doing that? So you want to make sure you have the appropriate pricing strategy in place so that you can be successful. Look at the servicing and our ability to meet the service of our commodities, of our goods and products and services that we're able to deliver on those service factors. Are we offering guarantees, warranties, our ability to serve those warranties and meet the needs of the customer in doing that? And then ultimately we're integrating sales and supply. If you're able to work with sales and sales can articulate to you the customer's requirements, and you can actually get the vendors to meet those requirements inside your supply chain, that reduces the cost on your manufacturing floor. So you want to integrate sales and supply. When sales says we're going to be able to sell in the first quarter, that's going to be our highest quarter that we're going to sell, we got to make sure we have enough supply to support those sales. And then when we have downtime, our sales aren't going to be as high, then we don't have excess inventory that we can't move. So we're going to integrate both of these. Okay. Moving on to the final is, how do we present the plans to executives so you get buy-in and support to implement strategic sourcing as a strategic capability? This is what it's all about at the end of the day. Can we get executive leadership to buy into strategic sourcing? JCPenney, one of their comeback strategies this year, okay, what do they say right here? This is great. This is good stuff. I was really excited when I found this. Okay, is what they did. We went out, recruited one of the best e-commerce executives, and went out and recruited a great supply chain executive. JCPenney gets it. They know costs are dropping or prices are dropping because customers have a choice. They need to maintain profitability based on their supply chain and their ability to manage their supply chain and reduce costs in the supply chain. Okay, so right here you see an alignment with an executive understanding the value of supply chain in the process. How do we do this? We start with a sourcing plan. We start to build it. Now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of actually building a strategic sourcing plan. Okay. Step one, internal conditions. What is our operational footprint, our operational needs? What is our financial condition and ability to leverage money in our supply chain? Do we make cash payments? Do we need to have net 30, net 60, net 90, whatever those payment terms are? Marketing, what are their plans in regards to customer acquisition, market share and sales? Supply, our ability to meet the needs of operations to deliver for marketing for the customers. Technology, do we have the appropriate technology to manage our supply chain in regards to managing inventory, placing orders, receiving customer service orders, all these, and then ultimately our product and service. Does it meet the needs of the requirement? Are things changing? So we're going to look at all these internal conditions. Once we have the internal conditions identified, then we're going to start to engage our stakeholders. As I mentioned in the beginning, by identifying your stakeholders, you can align with their needs. Align with their needs so that when you align with their needs, if they say I need to meet operational quotas, you met that need. Anything we need to reduce costs, you met that need. If we need to be more responsive into getting the stuff we need to make stuff, you're meeting that need. You're aligning strategic sourcing to meet those needs. One of the things I love to say is we are a supporting function, not a supported function. We are here to support everyone else. They can't do it without us, but we have nothing to do without them. So it's a win-win situation. It's a love-hate relationship. They want, so you just got to build that relationship, make sure that you understand what the stakeholders' needs are, and you align your strategy with their needs. Do the market analysis, not only your market using Porter's 5 forces, but the market of your vendors, their economics, your economics. Are you going to be able to increase sales? Sales going to decrease because of economic conditions? Or is the market changing to where there's something new and better and easier for them to buy? Do that market analysis. Do our supplier marketing strategy. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to improve their brand by getting with better customers, more higher quality customers that show that they're a better client or shows they're a better company? Or are they just trying to capture more market share? And are they willing to make deals to do that. So we're going to look at our suppliers and what are they trying to do in regards to growing their business. Do our risk-benefit analysis. When we do our risk-benefit analysis, we're going to take our commodities, all of them, and we're going to put them in one of these 4 categories: critical, strategic, leveraged, and tactical. This is also known as the Kraljic matrix. And once we identify our categories, and they are placed in these categories, your commodities are placed in these categories, you develop strategies based on these different categories. For example, tactical, something routine, something you can easily buy on the market. So you're going to have lots of competition where you can easily change supplier. You're not going to worry about the relationship so much. Leverage is where you're going to get volume, aggregation, standardization. You're going to go out and you're going to try and negotiate long-term deals, volume deals. Critical, bottleneck, if you don't have it, you don't do it. So you got to make sure it's not a high and very expensive item, but it's something that if you don't have it, you can't do it, such as the bottleneck that connects the cap to the bottleneck, that little ring, that's a bottleneck, that thing right there, that's one of those items. And then strategic is where you're going to get very strategic long-term value with your vendors, Once you have that identified, then we're going to go through the process, okay, and determine what strategies we're going to use with each category. Once we have that set up, we're going to come up with a rollout plan. What tasks do you need to do first, second, third? What are the milestones? What do you need as far as resources? And who is responsible? Key tasks. Planning, number 1. Data acquisition, meaning getting the data to do forecasting. Taking that data and doing the analysis to determine our requirements at the strategic level, 3 to 5 years out. Putting all those requirements together in a strategic sourcing plan, so then you have milestones. What are we going to tackle first? I would recommend you tackle something that's easy and going to show value right off the bat. Those are the milestones. And then you're going to slowly work into the process, milestone after milestone. Click, 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 keep going through it. Then you get a resource requirement. Okay, what resources do you need? What technology do you need to be successful? And then you're going to put one person in charge so that they can have the conversations with people when they're required to plan and they don't like it anymore, where they try and go around the system. You want to make sure your team has the capability to say, you know what, I would love to help you, but that's not my decision. I need you to go ahead and talk to John down the road there. He's going to help you. He's going to make sure that if we can go around that this exception is only an exception. It's not going to become a rule in doing that. So you're going to come up with that rollout plan. And then we're going to do our communication plan. We're going to communicate this plan in excruciating detail so people don't go around us. They know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and how it's going to affect them and what they need to do to support this change. Internal partners, internal customers, in regards to putting a process in place, they have to submit requests in a certain time period so you can put it on the market, bid it, get it back to them in a timely manner. Internal organization, all the different ways you're going to communicate. You meeting with marketing, meeting with sales, meeting with operations, talking to these people in a way that you're able to build information to be more strategic. Talking to your suppliers. So you're going to go from 10 suppliers down to 3. Those 3 are going to increase their volume, and those other 7 are not going to have that business anymore. So you want to talk with your suppliers and manage that in a way that not your suppliers that aren't going to win the long-term business aren't going to just stop producing and go somewhere else. You got to do that in a way that's not going to affect your organization. And of course, the companies that are going to win the business, are they ready for it? Do they have the capacity? Do they have that volume, that ability to expand quickly in doing that? And you're just going to go through, phase it in over time. And you're looking to implement strategic sourcing from the planning to starting to execute to becoming a strategic sourcing organization. You look at 3 to 5 years of effort. The first year alone is going to be planning. Finding data, analyzing the data, deciding what things you're going to tackle first. Then you're going to take those things, second year, 2, you're going to start to bid those out and put in those long-term contracts. And you're going to learn things, meaning you're going to fail and learn from those mistakes. And then you slowly but surely, 4 or 5 years, by 5th year, you are going to be on task, strategic planning for the long term, getting the best deals for your company, And that wraps it up for today. This is all the things that we covered over the last hour, and these are the fundamentals. This is the end result of your completing the CPSM certification, that once you complete the certification, you have the ability to do this level of planning. The value cannot be underestimated when you are able to control your pricing, control your cost, know that your supply chain is less risky, meaning you are able to always have what you need to support operations and give your customers what they need. Okay, shift to strategic sourcing. Start to take the actions today to start shifting to strategic sourcing. And part of that action is you becoming certified in this arena, knowing professionally, knowing that you have met a standard set by a global organization such as ISM. We're starting a brand new class, online class here April 10th. We would love for you to join us. If you're interested in joining us, just visit our website, cpsmtraining.com. Take a look around, see the benefits of our program, what we have to offer. Then give us a call at 877-680-0494 or just send us an email at info@cpsmtraining.com, and we'll be happy to answer any and all your questions. Thank you for your time this afternoon. If you'd like a copy of the slides, just shoot me an email at info@cpsmtraining.com, and we'll shoot you a copy of the slides so that you can be successful. But what I want you to do right now, before you do anything else, go ahead and go to LinkedIn right now, post in your status, learning more about leading your supply chain at Supply Leaders Academy. Let people know you've invested an hour with us, whether you are watching the recording or invested by watching the live session here. Just let people know you're out here, you're doing these things. You are being successful in investing in yourself, making an improvement which is going to impact your organization for the long term. Thank you for your time this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed this value. If you've enjoyed this value, please just go on LinkedIn, send me a message, post it out there, let people know that you found value in this video, and so that they too can watch it and get the same advantages of using strategic sourcing that you have acquired here today. Send this with the team, share it with your team, get all that information out there. Next thing you know, you're going to be a strategic sourcing organization as well, instead of one of those tactical purchase organizations that's always putting out fires. With that, have a wonderful afternoon. Be safe and take care.